Good evening, welcome, and thank you for joining us for tonight's program, Born Survivors, Three Young Mothers and Their Extraordinary Story of Courage, Defiance, and Hope. I'm Carrie Altman from the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center, HERC, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. HERC is dedicated to the building of a society resting on the values of tolerance and diversity, dignity, and respect toward all human beings. HERC teaches these lessons to students, educators, and community members every day throughout the state of Wisconsin and beyond. Thank you to our co-sponsor of this program, Boswell Book Company, our presenters, and to all of you watching, for your continued support of HERC's mission. And now it is a pleasure to introduce Emmy Award winning television journalist and Wisconsin native, Mr. Jerry Huffman.
Carrie, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And I am really pleased we are all here together. We're here because of this stunning book, excuse me, Born Survivors. As Carrie mentioned, it's the story of three young women who not only survived World War II, they survived being in a concentration camp and delivered 3 babies. You just have to stop and think about that for a moment. Our 2 guests tonight are very special people. First, Dr. Hana Moran Berger from Orinda, California is with us, as well as Dr. Mark Olsky, also from Madison, Wisconsin, about 3 miles from my house. So Mark and I are almost neighbors through all of this. Hana and Mark, thank you both for being here. It really means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry.
Mark, where and when were you born?
I was born on April 20th, which as it happens was Hitler's birthday, 1945, so I'm now 75 years old. And it was on a train in the dark, in the cold, in the snow and rain, somewhere between, between the east part of Germany and the western part of Austria. It was in Czechoslovakia, in the part that is today the Czech Republic.
Your mom was being transferred from one camp to another camp, right?
Right. She was crowded into a train car with several hundred, probably at least 150 other women, into a single car that was either intended for carrying coal or for carrying cattle.
Hana, same question to you. Where and when did you make your appearance?
I was born on April 12, 1945, in Freiberg concentration camp, in the factory where the slave laborers were working on making airplanes, Arado aircraft factory. Just an aside, there was never any airplane flying out of that factory, by the by. So that was on Thursday afternoon. And 2 days later, we were evacuated. My mother, with other women, was told we have to go. My mother was put on a truck with other very sick women, and they were taken to a forest, probably to be killed. But the Russian front was coming very close. And so they had to turn around and come back to the Freiberg train station, to which all the women that were already in the wagons were applauded because they understood what it meant. The only good part that happened from that was that these 30 women were the only ones in one of those wagons. So contrary to what Mark's mom experienced, my mom had a little bit more room.
Was there any one point, Hana, you can remember in your life where you realized, I had a bit of an unusual beginning here?
Well, it happened when I was 12 years old. When I in Czechoslovakia, where I grew up, the report cards distributed to students contained their name, the date of birth, and also the place of birth. And my fellow students always used to ask, so what is this was born in Germany? So I trotted back home and I said, Mom, how come I was born in Germany? Mom looked at me and said, well, you are now 12 years old. It's a young woman. And also you started history in the 6th grade. Let me tell you. And that's what she told me. That's what she told me. What happened to her family, what happened to her. And from then on, I knew I had my identity.
Do you remember being happy, angry, sad, all of the above? As
Probably
Mom explained this to you?
and amazed. I was just absolutely amazed because I said, how did you survive? And Mom said, I had to have you. I was going to survive. I had to have you. I was her 4th pregnancy. The first 3 didn't survive. And so she was absolutely adamant that she's going to have that child.
And how old was she? How old was she then?
She was 28 and a half years old.
Mark, same question to you. At some point, there had to be a dawning where your mom may have said, Mark, come here, I want to talk to you, or you, how did it happen for you?
It was very gradual, but I was approximately 6 years old, and my mother said, you were born on a train. And I thought, well, that is just super cool. That's so wonderful. Not like these ordinary kids that are dropped off by a stork. A train. She didn't go into details, and so and then just gradually, I did ask about why didn't I have grandparents. I knew I had some very loving aunts. I had an uncle that I hadn't met, a couple of uncles by marriage, but there were a lot of missing family members. But as I was growing up, and I was at that age when we were talking, almost everyone, we were in Israel. Most of the people around us were Holocaust survivors. So there was absolutely nothing unique about our family story. And most of the kids around me didn't have grandparents. So it just didn't seem that unusual. As far as some of the nasty details that people were killed and were killed purposefully, that came gradually and made me angry, sad, all of that. And my mother actually took great pains to tell me the story in such a way as to avoid, and my stepfather, of course, who too was a Holocaust survivor, whose own little 6-year-old boy had been taken away from him and killed, not killed in front of him, but taken away to be killed. And so they took pains not to have me angry, not to have me make my life about being angry. And I'm forever grateful about that.
I take it, Mark, I'll start with you, Mark. Your parents, your moms both took it in layers. There's something you could say to a 6-year-old that might be too young for a 12-year-old. So it wasn't just one, boom, here's the whole story.
Right.
Mark, you first.
Yes, and I can't really say when it was, but it was gradually from about the age of 6 on that I started getting some facts, and I would ask some questions. So, most of the time I'd ask questions and my mother would start crying. And so I learned not to ask too many questions. She would just tell me about people, tell me what her father was like, what her mother was like. And she told me that she had a couple of young brothers and sisters that did not survive, that were killed in the gas chambers. So that was horrifying. but it wasn't told to me in a way that was dramatic. Just, this happened. It's our family history.
Hana, same question. Your mom told you one version at 12. She told you something else at 15, 18.
No, actually, it was the other way around. At 12, I learned why Germany. But at 6, when I came home one afternoon on Saturday, when I was being called derogatory names, dirty Jew, I came home and I said, "What is a Jew?" And Mom said, "Let me show you." And she showed me a photograph of my late father. And she said, "Well," and her parents and my aunt and her mother-in-law. And she said, they were all Jews. They were all that. And it's not dirty. It's Jewish. And that's why they were killed. To which 6-year-old, my mother told me, I said, "I want to be 2. And can I go out and play again?" And for me at that moment, and it was only later when 12, and she told me about the cassette, that I began to understand what we went through. I was always asking, why don't I have grandparents? Why don't I have father? And as a matter of fact, I was very jealous of my friends in school who did have aunts and father. But having said that, I also understood that I mustn't ask too many questions.
When I was doing some thinking and some rereading today on our favorite book for all of us, and I'm thinking about all of the conversations around the world this book has inspired. Mark, you know the numbers better than me. It's 22 countries the book was released in, I believe. 20 something countries. But here's the real question I'd like you both to respond to. Mark, you first. What is it about this book that touched so many people?
Well, it's an interesting question because, I mean, certainly there are people who had family, had some relation to the Holocaust, not just Jewish people, but all over Europe. For instance, well, Mauthausen, which is the concentration camp that we were taken to as shortly after we were born, was a place where anti-Nazi dissidents from all countries were taken. And so there's an intense interest in Mauthausen, in Portugal, in Spain, in Italy, Russia, you name it. And so to some extent it's that. Some of it was just, it's a well-written book. It just tells the story so well that people go read this. It's good. It's not, you know, it's a Holocaust story. It's not going to be any barrel of laughs, but it's a good story and there's something positive within it. So it became a bestseller in multiple countries. In, of course, multiple languages. It was translated into 20 different languages and became a bestseller in several of those languages.
Hana, what is that something that brings everybody together? We're doing this 4 years later, which is amazing. Mark, I see you shaking your head too.
I think it is literally, as Wendy put on the on the title, it is a story of survival. That if somebody can survive this, then what am I complaining about? And they went through that. So why am I upset about my life now? And many people had told me, I never knew that they were babies. Just like Wendy, she never knew they were babies in the camp until she heard about it, which prompted her to write this story when she went to meet Eva. But I have to say that what prompted people to like the book was, beside the curiosity how one can survive such hell, was also amazement that these women had such strength. You see, my mother never saw herself as special. She says, I just did what I had to do to survive. Never. And we never talked about it beyond that time that she told me about it. Because, you know, in a socialist country, you barely admitted you were a Jew. so it was hearing about it from friends or from people now here. It was almost like, we are amazed. What strength. And I agree, what strength. All of them.
Mark, let's talk some history. Hana mentioned Eva. She got all this rolling?
Eva's mom got all this rolling. Eva and her mom got all this rolling.
Please keep going, Hana. A little bit of history,
Okay.
how this all came about.
So I talked a little bit ahead of time. I'm sorry. So after Wendy heard about this mom, the woman that died in Canada, and she was described in that she was an ex-prisoner of Auschwitz, where she had the baby and the baby died. So Wendy says, I never heard about babies in a concentration camp. And then Googled, are there any babies in born in a concentration camp? And she found the story of Eva's mom, Anka. And Anka was interviewed by BBC. Because as Wendy described it, if it would have been somebody in Australia, I'm on the next plane, but this was just 2 hours away. So she went to visit Eva, arranged to visit her. Anka by that time was already gone.
Let me just add, they're in the UK.
Excuse me, they're in the UK. Wendy is in the UK and Eva is in the UK. She lives in Cambridge. And so Wendy started to talk to Eva, and Eva told her everything about her mom, at which point Wendy says, I have to write your story because you are so unique. And Eva smiled. This was in 2003. Eva smiled and she said, I'm not the only one, there are another 2. And then she told the story how we all met in Mauthausen at a celebration and how we immediately took to each other and we are brother and sisters. And that's how we feel. And that's when Wendy said, I have to write a book about all 3 of you.
Mark, what are your memories of that first conversation with Wendy Holden?
Sorry?
No, from Mark, your memories of that first conversation with Wendy.
She was all business and she just wanted to know, would it be all right if I wrote the story of your mother? And I said, well, of course, yes. I had no idea. I knew she was a writer, but I had no idea that she was a great writer. So she didn't introduce herself as a great writer. I'm
a great writer.
Yeah, right. So, but as far as I was concerned, any writer that would come to me and say, is it all right if I write the story of your mother? I would say, of course, sure, that would be wonderful. So I'll do everything I can to help, and any facts I can get you, any sources that I can make available to you. So the first conversation was just about asking permission, and I really didn't get the insight into this great sparkling personality that she has. Yeah, let's do this, and that was that. But then afterward, of course, I got to know her well, and it's been delightful.
Did you
see youngest sister, just so you know?
Beg your pardon?
She is our youngest sister.
Yes.
Good point.
I've adopted her, and she's adopted us.
When Wendy approached you, Hana, what did you think initially? I mean, did you ever see any of this and the travels and the TV and the awards and the sales and yada, yada, yada? I mean, or what did you see, or what did you imagine?
Well, first of all, I was in panic. With like, oh, what am I going to do? How can I do it? Never saw that it's going to develop into this. I asked my son for permission, and of course my husband for permission, because it meant we will become public personage. And my son says, Ima, you got to do it. That's for Savta, his Savta. And Mark said, absolutely, you better tell the story before it's the end. And when I met Wendy, there was immediate spark. She had this wonderful personality. And she spent time here in our house, 4 days, back and forth and back and forth. And we had so much fun. We laughed so much. I know this is not a laughing matter story, but we managed to find humor. When I was describing how my late father met my mom, my late mom, and how my mom described my father as being drunk and she will never go out with him. And they were married 6 months later. So that's just an apropos. So it was easy to talk to Wendy.
Outstanding. We've got our first question. And let me just mention to anyone that's out there, you're probably a lot smarter about Zoom than I am, but there are ways you can magically type to us and send us a question. So please send us a question. If you would, tell us where you're from. We have a question, and I hope I pronounced this properly. Harv or Harvey, possibly. Did the camp leaders know your moms were pregnant? Mark?
Mark? Okay.
Okay. I think, well, my mother said what she told me about it, and we didn't that's not a question that I put to her exactly. So, and not one that she addressed exactly, but she said that it was quite a while into her pregnancy, into her being at Freiburg, that people started to at least suspect it. There were a couple of the Nazi women guards that seemed to be aware and actually, and one thing that she said to me when, as I was, because as a teenager, I was angry. I really thought about the possibility of devoting some part of my life to getting even. And she made a point of telling me, if not for the fact that there were a few decent or semi-decent people among the Germans, we wouldn't be alive. And so she said there were a couple of people who at least suspected that she was pregnant, that gave her a little extra space, let's say, to I don't know if that she didn't get extra food or anything like that, but she said that people did not make an issue of it.
Mark, I don't want to sound like Dr. Phil too much here, but who were you angry at? Hitler, Germany, Germans?
All Germans. Period. I mean, as far as I was concerned, I could walk into a room full of Germans and throw a bomb and be very happy about it. That was my thinking at the age of 15.
Hana, back to the original question. Were the commanders or any of the Germans aware your mom was expecting you?
Not until about a week before I was born. They were not aware. The reason for it is that in Auschwitz, my mom got this coat dress, which was very large. And of course, she didn't put on too much weight, as we know. And nobody knew until one evening, she must have lifted that border and that dress. And one of the prisoners, also from Bratislava, started screaming like crazy, "You are pregnant and you're going to get us all killed," to which all the women guards came running to the barrack because there was such a hullabaloo. And they asked my mother, "Is it true?" And Mom said yes. To which they said, "What do you need? What do you need?" And my mother said, "I've been standing 12 hours a day on my feet, and I would so much like to have a warm bath for my feet." And they brought her a bucket of hot water.
The Germans did this?
German women guards, week before I was born. So from then on, they knew that my mom was expecting, and a week later, I came. Yeah, my mom always said that she was worried she's going to be killed right on the spot, and they said, "What do you need?" My mom spoke fluent German, and so, it was all conducted in German. Yeah.
Wow. Mark, a question from Melissa. How were the mothers able to save the babies in the camps?
Well, first of all, we're talking about all three of us born within weeks, even less than a full week before we were all liberated. I suspect that there were children born in the days and weeks before we were that probably had a much harder time, that did not survive simply because the conditions were so harsh. Our mothers, I know my mother, they were just amazed that they had milk. I mean, the first, the most basic thing was no one was going to get us any Gerber baby bottles. They had to have to actually make milk so that we could live, and they miraculously they did. They had just enough, barely enough nutrition that they did that.
Hana, a question from Bev. Do you think people can be transformed by hearing your stories, you and Mark and Ava and Wendy's as well, as the author?
I think so, because I have seen it and heard it. One of the things that young people, when I talk to them in Portugal, students, and even here in USA, a fourth grader, they all ask the same question: how come you smiling? And I say, I'm alive. What else is there? We have to enjoy life. So I believe so, because they are realizing, the people who are reading Wendy's story, that people can survive the worst of all and don't have to be angry forever. So I believe so. I believe that Wendy's story helps people to see the life somehow different than they did before.
Mark, you may not remember this. You and I had our first conversation at a Perkins some years ago.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to repeat a story you told me that day, because it's very emotional. You and your mother were taken into a gas chamber.
Yes. Well, the intent when we were all taken to Mauthausen was for all of us to be gassed, and then which they had an active gas chamber there, and a crematorium, and it's still there as part of the museum exhibit now at Mauthausen, which is something I would recommend for everyone. But as they were taken, we were taken to the gas chamber. It turned out that the gas chamber had been inactivated. They ran out of gas. They essentially, we arrived on April 29th, 1945. April 28th was the day that the gas chamber became inoperative. And from what I understood, they were literally taken there before realizing that they weren't going to be able to gas us. And then they said, okay, just put them in the barracks, put them in the tents, and the lice will eat them.
How do you cope with that, Mark?
Well, again, I got the story gradually, and it seemed inhuman, but it also seemed like background story. I mean, I grew up as a happy kid. My parents saw to it that I would be a happy kid. And so I really can't claim to have focused on that moment or any part of those moments, any part during that entire time. Our life was worth, to the Nazis, our life was worth about as much as the life of a mosquito. And that's what really, that is what fascism does to anyone who is seen as not worthy of life, not worthy of respect, or thought of as a full human being. So yeah, that was, the idea that someone wouldn't have to think twice about throwing me off the train or something. The fact that I was born April 20th actually had something to do with my survival, or may have had a lot to do with it, because it was a big holiday for the Germans. It was Hitler's birthday. His last birthday, as it turned out, he would die 10 days later. But that day, even as the Germans had suffered so badly for all the things that he had done to them, or supposedly for them, their big national holiday was that birthday, April 20th. And so somehow I was seen as special, as I was blessed being born on April 20th. And so the gift was that they wouldn't kill me, which is a great gift, by the way. I mean, I haven't had a better one.
Good point. Hana, I'm conscious of the fact that Ava's not here.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about her. Who is she? Where is she?
Well, as I said earlier, she lives in England, Cambridge. She's very much involved with talking about the Holocaust. She does more work for remembrance of the Holocaust than we do. We don't go around to schools or to prisons or to various other places like to talk about it. She's incredible in that sense. I wouldn't have the emotional power or strength to do that, what she does. And she's this petite, beautiful woman who has energy for 5 of us. And it's incredible. And I love her very much. So the only thing is, I'm sorry she's so far away.
Or we got to change the time zones or something so we can
You
get all of us
promise?
together around a campfire. Here's the question I don't think I've talked to either of you about. One of the things I've noticed, you came through this incredible life. It would have been easy to be angry, to be bitter, or whatever. All 3 of you ended up helping other people. Mark, you're a physician. Hana, you worked in medical research. Ava, I believe, was a school teacher before she started working at the British Holocaust Center.
Mm-hmm.
Put that in context for me. All 3 of you turned out to be pretty doggone nice people.
So the bottom line is, for me, if I may start, is that what I wanted to do, I have some very large shoes to fill. I have some very large shoes to fill.
Okay. Your
my
parents?
grandparents, my father, my aunt, they were brilliant. And I decided that I have to pay back for the fact that I survived. And one of the ways that I decided how to do it, not only to be a good daughter to my mother and not to talk back and do whatever she wants to do and say, yes, mom, yes, mom, yes, mom, but also get involved with making medicines for people so they stay healthy. I didn't want to go to medical school, but because I felt that was not good enough, but I fell in love with chemistry.
Me.
And chemistry helped me to do the research and pharmaceutical research, and that's what I spent 35 years doing. So I need it. And every day, even to this day, I ask myself, have I paid it back yet? Have I paid it back yet? That's what it is.
And we have a cat trying to materialize here, and I'm doing this. And my
No,
lovely
but
wife is-
bring him back. I want to say hi.
Mark, okay.
Mm.
See you, dude. Go to bed. I forgot where I am.
Mark.
Mark,
Oh,
oh, yeah, that's where I've seen you before. Mark, you, I'll say it again. You're a doggone nice guy too. You even gave me ties. You could have gone so many ways. You could have still gone from an angry teen to an angry adult to an angry grandpa, but you're not.
Sure.
Wow. You help people, thousands, Mark, as a doctor.
Well, yeah, you have to see a lot of patients to make a living. But how it mostly started was really my dad, my stepfather. His health was bad from the time I knew him. He had smoked. Well, of course, he'd been with all the problems that the Holocaust did to him. Then we were living in Israel in hot weather. He was working at a steel mill, lifting huge rolls of wire. And he had he had his first heart attack when I was 11 and almost died. So I got to see the inside of the hospital. Hospitals just scared the daylights out of me. I hated them. I hated the smell of them. I hated the fact that there was the potential for death. And but I met doctors, and some of them really were good people that that helped me understand what was going on, helped all of us get through the difficult human part of it, not just the medical part of it. And I also met some people that weren't so good at that. They might have had the technical skills, but not so much the human skills. And then he had another big heart attack. And after we came to the US, he had another one. He only lived about another 9 years after we came to the US, not even all of 9 years. And I got to see medicine up close and personal. Other than that, there had not been any medical person in my family up to that time, but I got to know his doctors, and I got to see what they were doing. And so in a scary sort of way, it got fascinating. And of course, being a Jewish kid, the idea, when I mentioned the possibility I'd go to medical school, my family was not opposed at all.
I'm smiling just like I bet your mom smiled.
I can tell you the day that I got my acceptance from the first medical school acceptance that came in the mail, there was screaming, and I was just like, that's not the school I'm really that interested in. And they're just screaming at the top of their lungs, you're gonna be able to go to medical school. Well, not that medical.
My son, the doctor.
Yeah.
Good for you, Dr. Olsky.
So yeah, and as it happened, I had no idea what it was going to be like to go to medical school, to learn medicine, and to do the things that you have to do, which is sometimes not the cleanest or the best smelling stuff. But you have to talk to people a lot, and you have to understand what's going through their minds. It just turned out I loved it. So it was, I'd like to say it was an unselfish kind of thing, but it turned out to be extremely selfish because it was wonderful.
Outstanding. Sarah, back in Milwaukee, time for the pictures. I told you we would give you an obvious cue here. Let's do a little bit of, and let's start with Hana. This is your life. Keep watching your screen there, Hana. You're going to see the first picture popping up in just a moment. Here we go. There we go.
This is Mark's family.
That's Mark's family. Mark, why don't we talk about your family? Who are we looking at? And who's that cute little baby in the middle? Oh, Mark, I think you muted your microphone, pal.
Okay.
Here we go. Who's the cutie in the middle?
Okay. In the little person, I think, is me. Pretty sure, just based on how my aunts and my mother and the boyfriends of my two aunts are looking at me, it must be me.
Next picture, Sarah.
I'm sorry?
No, Sarah's going to change over to the next picture. There we go.
Ah,
How old are you there, Mark? Is that pre-medical school or after medical school?
I'm 12. I'm still living in Israel at that point. And it was a school picture. They took, I guess they took pictures of all of us in our class. And I was given a copy of that, and I just recently found it.
Cute kid.
Mark, Deb, let me get the right question here. Deborah, I think her name was Deborah. What changed your mind? This is the young kid who was angry. Yes, no?
Yes. Well,
what changed your mind is the real question, Mark.
It was my mother. She would talk to me for hours about that. Not so much the history, but she would talk to me about, she'd give me some scenarios of, so what are you going to do? What you're going to go, you'll try to kill and hurt some Germans. You're going to have to live in Germany to do that. And you'll probably get the wrong ones. You won't get the ones that were nasty. You'll get the ones that the few that were decent. And she really talked me through it. And the biggest thing, I mean, actually, she said one line she just said, we've lost so much. We lost so much in that war. But if we lose your soul, then we lose even more. Then they really have taken one more thing than what we have to lose.
Beautiful. Next picture, Sarah. That lady changed your life.
So now 50 years after we're married, and we're sitting there. This is a big part of our life these days, is playing bridge and teaching bridge, teaching other people how to play the game. So we met while playing the game of bridge 50 years before that picture was taken, or actually 53 years before that picture was taken. We were a lot younger, and we enjoyed the game. We play a lot of different games. I used to play a lot of chess. There's a lot of strategy involved, and you get to know a whole lot of really good people, a lot of interesting people. So this is what
You're downplaying your skills a little bit, Mark. Sarah, we should have one more picture, I believe.
Well, yes.
You guys are top ranked in the world.
Well, not ranked exactly, but we did win one worldwide event, which was
only won one worldwide event.
Right. So anyway, and we take the game pretty seriously, and it gets very competitive. And there are times when some very sweet people. One very, very nice little old lady was quoted as saying, "Mark Olsky is no friend of mine." And
that's pretty good.
One of my doctor friends came to me and said, "Why would somebody say that about you?"
You never know. Sarah, let's move over to Hana's pictures and talk about some of her memories here, if you would. Hana, tell us about Mom and Dad.
I love this picture.
Was it their wedding day?
This was after they got married. And my father was a journalist. And Allgemeine Jüdische Zeitung in Bratislava. It was in German. And it was before the war. They married in 1941. So this picture was taken probably about a month or a few weeks after the marriage in 1941. I love this picture.
Let's go to the next one. You and your mom.
This is 1949, when mom said, finally, I was suitable to be photographed, because she admitted I was very ugly, very thin, very ugly, no pictures. But this one was at the photographers, and I love this picture as well. This is my mom,
Yeah.
and I love her.
Now we got to meet Daddy Pete.
Yeah.
Next picture, please, Sarah.
So
where do we start? I mean, that's the man who found your mom at Mauthausen, and she had this little tiny baby. She didn't know how sick you were, but please tell us about Pete.
So Pete Peterson, or but they called him Pete, but that was not his real first name. And he was a medic. After my mother almost lost me at the gate of Mauthausen when they came up the road, and the soldiers at the gate wanted to tear me away from my mom, there was a woman couple who took me from my mom and said, come and I want to play with the baby. And then after a few minutes, she sent my mom down to the barracks, which were empty, where other women also came to. And my mother spent a week there with myself. So this is 29th of April. And I don't know how that week went, whether she ate, I don't know. But on the 5th of May, she heard music. And because my mother was fluent in English, she recognized the song. She recognized the Roll Out the Barrels song. And she saw the cars going up the road. This was after Mr. Kosiek already called. He was the one who actually came there first. So mom was walking around with me in her arms, and this young medic came by, Leroy Peterson, and mom recognized that he had a red cross on his helmet. And she says to him, I want to show you something. And she showed me to him. And then she asked for Mr. Peterson, isn't she beautiful? Oh, 1 kilo and 600. My mom didn't have much milk.
3 pounds.
And 3 pounds, thank you. And Mr. Peterson, as he told me later, he was so shocked, but he says, yes. Well, by that time I already had an infection on the whole body. I didn't look so good. And he told my mom, I'm going to bring the doctor from our unit because he has to see your baby. And sure enough, the doctor came and said to my mom, we have to cure your baby. Can you give her to us and we will bring her back? And my mom just handed me over. She didn't know what was going to happen.
Your mom passed you as a few days old infant to these 2 Americans.
3 weeks old, yeah.
3 weeks old, excuse me.
No problem.
Because they had penicillin.
That was the first time I got penicillin in the army hospital there, and which was in, I think, Gusen, next camp. That's where they built a hospital.
Right.
And,
Hana might be the first civilian that ever got penicillin, because
that's true.
It had just been invented and was used for the treatment. There was so little available, it was used for the treatment of soldiers. So this was a civilian getting it was a brand new experience.
That is correct. And it was Mr. Sir Ian Fleming who discovered the penicillin. and it was only allowed to be used by the army forces. So yes, and that saved my life. The next
Did you
day
say
they brought
Ian
me back to
Fleming?
my mother. What?
Excuse me, did you say Ian Fleming,
Yeah,
the author?
Fleming, Professor
Alexander.
Pardon me?
Alexander was the Ian.
Alexander Fleming.
Yeah.
Alexander.
Sorry,
Yeah. Sorry.
made my eyebrows go
Gotta
up.
give
No,
credit
no.
where credit is
It
due.
was somebody else. Yes,
Yeah,
sorry.
Fleming. Yeah.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Mark. Alexander Fleming. Yeah. I guess I got excited here. And so they brought me back to my mom, and full of scars. And so when in 2000 we met, I found Mr. Peterson. I looked for him at the 11th Armored Division website. And finally, I discovered him, and we started to communicate by emails with the help of his son. And then I was convinced by other people to go to Mauthausen to meet with him. I mean, I didn't want to go to Mauthausen, but I was told you can meet Mr. Peterson there, and then that's what convinced me that I should go. And this was after he came to this cafe where we were staying, my husband and I, and he came with his two sons. He looked around where there was a seat, and there was a seat right next to me on a bench. And he sat down, he kind of looked, and he says, "Hana?" And we both started to cry.
Oh man, pass the tissues. I'm with you, Hana. I mean, what was that like? I mean,
It was
clearly you had
amazing.
no memory of it, but you're meeting the man.
I became very close to him all the way till the end. And he actually was able to tell me something very important. Before my mom passed away at the age of 90, the last few weeks when I was with her in Bratislava, she kept saying to me, she looked at me and she said, "Will you forgive me?" I said, "Mom, what am I going to forgive you? You were incredible. You saved my life." Never mind. She liked to say, "Never mind." And then again, a couple of hours later, "Will you forgive me?" So when I went to see Daddy Pete before he passed away himself, I spent a week with him. And I asked one day, I said, "Daddy Pete, why did my mother say, 'Will you forgive me?'" And he looked down, and then he looked at me, and he said, "Because she didn't know she will ever see you again after she just handed you to us." And I guess that's what was going through her mind toward the end of her life. She unfortunately also had dementia, but she started to think how things would have ended if she wouldn't have seen me again. And how could she have just handed me over to strangers? And I have to say that that really was extremely important for me to hear, because I didn't understand what she was talking about. But he was so gentle. And apparently, Daddy Pete, his sons told me that almost every evening after dinner, until we got in touch, he used to say, "I wonder what happened to that baby." Well, we found out.
She turned out good.
Yeah.
But now you've got Brian Peterson, Debbie.
That's my family.
For me, has been about extended families.
It is. I mean, I don't have anybody. It was just my mom and me, and then of course my son. Yeah.
Real quick, Sarah, let's get a shot of the family before we move out of the pictures.
Yay.
Tommy, the grandkids.
That's the best gift, to have those two little ones. Tommy is wonderful. My daughter-in-law is wonderful. That's Sasha and that's Jack. That was taken a few years ago. They are now big kids.
Mark,
I'm very proud of them.
I just looked at the time and I can't believe it, but we can't end this without talking about Albert Koziak. give us, and with apologies to his family, tell me about Albert. He's the man that made all this happen.
Well, he is, of course. I never had the privilege of meeting him, but I have met his sons. I've met his grandchildren and other family members. But he was the platoon leader, the sergeant who had the job of preparing things for the celebration of the end of the European of the war in Europe. So it was May 5th, the anticipated meeting of the Soviet Army and the American Army was going to be the official celebration. They were going to meet on the Danube River, not far at all from where Mauthausen was, which is the Soviets had come. They actually had taken Vienna, which is only 30 miles from Mauthausen, and the Americans had taken the western part of Austria. It all could have. It was a matter of days. It was almost like a race between where the Americans were going to take Austria and Germany, and where the Soviets were going to. Anyway, they
Lead it along here, Mark.
Sergeant. Their job was to prepare the bridges, make sure that there are no bombs, make sure that everything would go smoothly. And so he was told, don't do anything, but just go check those bridges, and don't worry. He said, well, he got word that there was a concentration camp, that there were people who were in bad shape, and he was told, no, don't do that. That's none of your business. You go make sure the bridges are okay. But he was told that, anyway, long story short, he went into Mauthausen against orders, risking possible court-martial. But when he saw that, he was horrified. The good news was that the Germans holding all those prisoners were happy to surrender to an American rather than to a Russian. And so he didn't encounter any hostile fire in doing it, but he faced the possibility of discipline for having not gone with his orders. But in any event, he was the unofficial liberator of Mauthausen, as the leader of the men that got the Germans to surrender to him. Right. Over the years, he was a big part of the story. He told people about it. He's again, his family has had. We've had Hana and Eva and I and Wendy. We've all had a great connection with Sergeant Kosiak's family.
Right.
Let me see if I've got my math right here, Mark. The sergeant's patrol was 10, 12 guys, not a very
less.
But and there were
about 8.
There were tens of thousands of prisoners.
Right.
There were probably by then, at that point, certainly over 10,000 prisoners, barely alive, and some that were right at the edge of death. Yes, and some hundreds of armed German soldiers.
I'm just, my dad, as you know, was a World War II soldier. I'm trying to imagine what he's in trouble because he disobeyed orders. He just found 10,000 people that, holy cow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Let's head towards wrapping up. You first, Hana. Think about what's going on today.
Oh, please.
Think about what your life has been like, your mom's life was like. Tommy's got 2 kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to tell them?
Well,
Hana's words of wisdom.
Be proud of who you are. Learn the knowledge. It's very important. And don't believe the stories. Don't believe the deniers of the Holocaust. That's what drives me absolutely crazy, to hear about the denial of the Holocaust. I can't stand it. This is inappropriate. And we cannot be silent. We cannot be silent, because as Elie Wiesel said, silence is the words. It's like agreeing to it. So the bottom line is, I'm saying, you do the best what you can do. I'm telling my grandchildren, be proud of who you are. You have heritage, and keep on going, but be careful. You have to be careful and vigilant, because there's a lot of, unfortunately, bad people out there. I'm sorry to say it like that.
No, you're fine. I apologize for interrupting. Mark, how many grandkids do you and Mary have?
We have 5. The most recent one just a couple of months ago, 4 months ago.
Mazel tov, brother.
Yeah, pardon?
Mazel tov, brother.
Thank you. Anyway,
what's your message to those 5 kids if they look at this 10 years from now? How are they going to remember Papa Mark?
Yeah, first of all, look at the story of the family. Look at what is happening elsewhere in the world. We started life, Hana and Eva and I, and our parents, our mothers, of course, we started life as refugees. Nobody wanted us. We ended up living in Germany for several years, not by choice, but because the US, Canada, other places wouldn't take us. Israel was about the only place that we would, and it wasn't until middle of 1948 that we could even legally go there. So as soon as we were able to make that trip, we did go there, but we were refugees. We, for the first couple of months, we literally lived at Mauthausen, obviously in much better conditions than what we were under the Third Reich. So what hopefully our kids will take from this, and our grandchildren, is empathy for those who are right now downtrodden, who are given no rights, are treated as we were treated. And right now we have the privilege of not being treated that way, but we have the responsibility to see that as much as possible, this doesn't happen. Not only does it not happen to us and to our descendants, but it doesn't happen to other people.
Mm-hmm.
We never run out of things to talk about, do we? Toda.
And Badma.
Brittany, we're done. And I wish it's rare. I'm at a loss for words.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you too.
Thank you.
Everyone at Herc.
Thanks everybody. Thank you, the center.
Yes, and thank you all of you who tuned in and are listening. Thank you. Pass it on.
Mark and Hana and Jerry, thank you so much for sharing these incredible, powerful, and fascinating stories. My name is Brittany Hager McNeely from the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center, also known as HERC, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you enjoyed this evening's presentation and would like to explore our archive of past HERC programs, please see the past programs link that was just shared in the Facebook comments. I'd like to thank each one of you who joined us tonight for spending time with us and for helping HERC continue its mission to build a society resting on the values of tolerance and diversity, dignity, and respect towards all human beings through teaching the lessons of the Holocaust. It is through the support of viewers like you that we are able to continue our critical work across the state of Wisconsin and beyond. Please visit our website, holocaustcentermilwaukee.org, to learn about HERC's upcoming virtual programs and how you can join us in the work that we do to remember, educate, and inspire. Thank you so much, and have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.